Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. My name is Michelle Jolin. I am the CEO and co-founder of Results for America. We are very proud to be hosting today's session with our partners, the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Today's session will focus on making our roads safer through the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. As many of you know, applications for an additional round of Safe Streets for All grants are now open through June 26th, 2025. This competitive grant program gives cities funding for planning, demonstration, or implementation projects that make our nation's roads safer by reducing traffic-related deaths and serious injuries. Today, we're going to walk through some of the key updates in this year's NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, and we're going to focus on what's changed, what stayed the same, and what you need to know to submit a strong application. In addition to today's webinar, we also have several resources to help local governments submit competitive applications for this Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. The link for those resources is in the chat, so take a look at those, also on the LIH website, as always. And so just want to thank you all for joining us, and please make sure you ask your questions in the Zoom chat. We want to make sure this is an interactive session and we get to as many of your questions as possible. So I'm now going to hand it over to Connor Torresian, who is the Deputy Assistant Secretary at the U.S. Department of Transportation. And I just want to give a big thank you to you, Connor, for joining us, and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. It's really good to be here with you guys. So I started at DOT about a month ago, and I come from Capitol Hill, where I served on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and then for several different members of Congress before that. I'm joined by some of my fellow intergovernmental affairs team, Sabrina and Abigail, who are on the call, and between the three of us and some additional help, we are essentially all the supports. We are the liaison between you all and the Department of Transportation. So just out the gate, I want to share that if you ever need anything related to Department of Transportation, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy to be responsive and helpful however we can. So just before I touch on Safe Streets for All, I do want to just briefly highlight Secretary Duffy's priorities, which I think could be helpful in kind of informing you all and what to highlight when it comes to grant applications. First and foremost, his top priority is safety. The terrible plane crash at DCA Airport really shaped his perspective on safety, given it was really the first thing that really took up air in the room after being sworn in. And so that's really a key priority and top priority for the secretary. Another big priority is innovation. Secretary Duffy really wants the United States to be the leader in innovation, or excuse me, in infrastructure and transportation infrastructure. And, compared to other countries, we feel like other countries are being a little bit more adventurous and moving quicker on innovative projects. And we want to return to being the leader in this space. And so insofar as projects that you're applying for insofar as you have projects that you're applying for grants for, if you can highlight how there is innovative new ways that you're looking at doing things, highlight that, because I think that would be pretty helpful. Another top priority for the secretary is families. I don't know if you all know this, but the secretary has 9 children, and I think it's pretty clear the president also is pretty intent on making sure that families remain a top constituency in the country. And so insofar as you have projects that are going to benefit communities and neighborhoods with, say, emerging rising population, particularly when it comes to young children, there are maybe a lot of schools in the area that the project would benefit. Highlighting that type of thing, I think, would be pretty advantageous for your grant. Additionally, And the last thing I'll mention in terms of priorities, but certainly not the least, is turning dirt. The secretary really cares about trying to move projects quickly because he's a former member of Congress. He knows what it's like for communities in his district to be waiting around for years on end to get money, and he wants to change that. So, within taking office, he did a lot of work to really streamline processes internally. And we've been working to try to figure out ways to really move the process quicker. And um, so if your project has the ability to get shovels in the ground pretty quickly after receiving the grant, that's something as well to highlight in the grant application. So those are just a few of his top priorities. And then as it relates to Safe Streets for All, one of the first major NOFOs that went out in the past couple months. And as Michelle mentioned, that's for fiscal year 25, and that application or the portal closes on June 26th. $1 billion is available for this fiscal year, and then there will be another billion for fiscal year 26 as well. Um, that's what IJA provided, and obviously we'll be taking up a surface reauthorization bill, or Congress will be in the coming months. So we'll see what they do with the program then. But obviously we're in close contact with our Senate and House counterparts when it comes to high surface reauthorization. Um, Something I'll mention is there's also a 30% set aside of all of the 1 billion for planning awards. And that's something that has historically been undersubscribed. And the application is 2 pages long, so I just want to flag that for you all. Um, and there were webinars that our team had done on this, and I know Jamie had sent that around to you all. So I encourage you to watch those if you haven't already, because those are a really good resource when it comes to any questions you might have about the application. Um, I think that pretty much covers it. So I'm happy to kick it back for questions for you all.
Thank you so much, Connor. We really appreciate you coming here and sharing the priorities. One of the questions that we had gotten early from someone who had pre-registered was about the focus on families and schools, and I think we really saw in some of the previous rounds of funding how there are access to school issues in so many communities. And I just wonder if you can speak a little bit more about the kinds of data and whether, the supporting statements, or what are you looking for to evidence those impacts?
Yeah, so there was a memo that went out maybe a month or two ago on this that I'm happy to share with you, Jamie, to then share with the group. But that kind of goes more in depth into what exactly we're looking at, because I think that could definitely inform the grant process. So happy to share that around.
Great. And we got a question from Chris Milbank about matching grants and how you all are thinking about prioritizing projects that have other financial means behind them.
Sure. So I don't know exactly understand the minutia of the question, but generally speaking, the matching funds will be the same as they were for fiscal year 24, as far as I know. Um, However, this administration, Secretary Duffy, we care a lot about being effective with taxpayer dollars. And so, obviously, if you can highlight how the monies you're leveraging are being used efficiently, I think that's something to highlight as well in the grant application, because that is a key priority for the secretary and the administration. But when it comes to the exact breakdown of cost share, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but happy to share that after the fact.
Great, thank you. And I think some of our other attendees who've been big fans of the Safe Streets program have shared with everyone. It is the same 20% match. As Connor said, that's remained consistent. But I do think we've seen in some of the guidance from the Secretary's office some prioritization for those that have additional, especially private investment behind them. We also got a question about competitiveness, and I think we've seen this before, that the implementation pool of funds is rather limited. Can you just speak about to sort of how the administration is hoping to see the planning grants and how competitive it would be to get a planning grant?
Yeah, so planning grants last time around were undersubscribed. So I think, this time around it's likely to, in terms of the three pots of grants available under Safe Streets, I would probably say it's likely going to be the least competitive compared to the other two, just given historically how it's worked out. So yeah, I think that especially given its two-page application, I would encourage you to apply for planning grants. The webinar does highlight, any basically it goes through the process of applying. And so if you have questions related to it, I'm happy to connect you with our team. But I do encourage you all to apply for planning grants and to check out that webinar.
That's great. And I just want to put in a plug. Connor mentioned it at the beginning, but he and his team have been fabulous to engage with. And I know that so many of the folks on this call have already won Safe Streets and Roads for All money. And many of you have started implementing your projects. I encourage you to invite Connor and his team out to see the great dirt that's being turned, as you say, to understand those projects even better on the ground. So I wanted to
Yeah,
say,
no, absolutely. And Jamie, if I may, I'm sure a lot of you have applied for fiscal year 24 Safe Streets for All grants, or for that matter, any other type of grant as well that you're still waiting to hear on. So just something I briefly want to touch on. When Secretary Duffy came into office, we inherited a backlog of 3,200 grants that were awarded but without grant agreements, which is an unprecedented amount. It was actually the total number was 1,000 between when Biden left off, when Trump won office and then took office, 1,000 grants. And so we're going through a lot. And as you all very well know, different grants, they're along different paces when it comes to how close they are to getting to a grant agreement. And so we're actively working through all of those, all 3,200, getting through several. We've gotten through several of these grants already with over in the hundreds of $1 million range, but smaller ones too. So that's something that we're actively working on expeditiously, making sure that they're in line with the president's executive orders, and working with you all and your state duties to get that money out the door.
and Connor, if a community that's on this call today hasn't been, maybe hearing back from the person that they've been reaching out to at either DOT or FHWA, what would you recommend?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked that because that's something that I also wanted to highlight, which is please always ping me if you're ever getting stonewalled or think you're waiting for too long for a response. I will be more than happy to be the intermediary between whoever you've been working with to make sure you get that expeditious response.
Great, thank you. And there was a question in the chat, which maybe end on this one, about population size. Do you know, is there any population floor for the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant?
I don't have that number in front of me if there is, but I'm happy to get back to you on that.
Yeah, my understanding is we're really trying to make sure that this money touches communities of all sizes. And so we specifically have been running boot camps for communities with smaller populations. And so in the link that I shared above, you'll find some boot camp resources. Those have been developed for communities of under 150,000. So I'd really encourage you all to check those out. We know that smaller communities often have less resources to hire fancy grant writers and do that research. And so that's why we've put sort of this technical assistance together to be able to help those communities. So please, Rhonda, if you're interested, reach out to us, and we'll be running a poll later to find out what are your needs and how can we support you running up to June 26th to get to a completed competitive application. So I just want to thank Connor and Abigail and their entire team for joining us today. And now we're going to sort of switch directions and move into a panel with some of the cities that have won Safe Streets and Roads for All grants and can talk a little bit about the process of applying for those grants. What were their goals and what did they hope to achieve with these projects? And where are they now? And what do they hope to do next? And so just really privileged and grateful, Mayor Jensen of Noblesville, Indiana, Eric Irwison, the Transportation Sustainability Director from Tempe, and Justin Henry, the Transportation Planner for Oklahoma City, for joining us today. We'll jump right in. I know you've each won sort of different size and different types of grants. So maybe I'll start with you, Mayor Johnson. If you could just tell us a little bit about your Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, what kind of grant, how much money was it for, and where are you now with the grant?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie, and good to see everybody. Connor, thank you for taking time to kind of go over from the Department of Transportation, the goals of Secretary Duffy. I know everyone on this call probably has different thoughts and questions about the new administration and where this is going. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit today. For context, I'm the mayor of Noblesville, Indiana, which is the 9th largest city in the state of Indiana, a population of about 75,000 people, just sort of for everyone on the call to kind of get context around that. We applied kind of on a whim, to be honest, for a Safe Streets for All grant in the winter of 2022, 2023 arena for the planning grant. And we were awarded a $200,000 planning grant to kind of look comprehensively within the community at areas of high accident, high fatality rates, et cetera, kind of going through that process. So we started the public outreach in the winter of 2022 and 2023. That led us to our safety action plan that was adopted by our city council in the spring of 2024, actually the first safety action plan in the state of Indiana using SS4A funds to be adopted by our city council. So we were really excited to kind of continue to lead the way around this conversation within our community and within the state of Indiana. Because of that safety action plan, we were able to kind of identify a key corridor for us that we wanted to tackle and apply for the next phase, which would be obviously that implementation grant phase that we're still in the process. I can tell you we got denied for that in January. Full disclosure, full vulnerability there. So we're looking forward to tackling that again. I was really glad to hear Connor talk a little bit about that safety component as well as the family component, because the corridor that we've identified for an implementation grant is a street adjacent to one of our elementary schools in our community that really is lacking some sidewalks, has some curvilinear blind curve roads that we're kind of identifying there. So really this whole exercise has been somewhat of an easy process. I know you're going to kind of ask about that application process. It's been a pretty simple process, to be honest, for considering a lot of the grants we apply for that many of us do can be complicated. And it really has sparked a healthy dialogue within our community around this comprehensive conversation of safety and reduction of fatalities and traffic accidents. And then again, it's kind of led to a narrowing of a specific project that really targets and meets the goals of the federal DOT that can really make this corridor safer for the families and the people that use it every day. So thanks for the opportunity. I look forward to answering more questions on our great project.
Thanks, Mayor Jensen. Look forward to coming back to you. Eric, could you talk a little bit about your grant?
Sure, thank you. I will give a little bit of background on Tempe, Arizona, that I represent, and I'm actually here representing our mayor who couldn't make it. So apologies for getting the second string here. I'm the director of transportation and sustainability at our city. Tempe is in Metro Phoenix, for those that don't know, Metro Phoenix, Arizona. Massive region. Phoenix is the biggest or the fifth biggest city in the country. We are right next door, directly to the east of Phoenix. We're a city of about 200,000 people. Strong college town. Arizona State University is here. We're actually the highest density big city in the state because we're landlocked. About 35 years ago, we reached our growth limits, and that has forced us to be more vertical and more high density in our growth. The grant that we applied for is on a major east-west corridor that connects to our neighbor cities. So it connects to Phoenix directly on the west side, and it connects to Mesa, Arizona, which is the third biggest city. Third biggest city in the state on our east side. So we are sandwiched between two major cities, and this is a corridor in the central part of our city for 4 miles, essentially city limit to city limit, on a street called Baseline Road. It is a 7-lane arterial, so 3 lanes one direction, 3 lanes the other direction, and then a center turn lane for all those left turn movements. The project, it is a safety-oriented, safety-focused project. It is taking this major arterial in our street that carries upwards of 35,000 vehicles a day, taking that and making it a safer street. Many approaches to doing that. We are a city that has adopted what's called a Vision Zero policy. Probably everyone is familiar with that on the call here. Something that our council really values, something our community is expressing a lot of importance to. We're a region that does have a pretty high number of fatal and serious crashes. So we've been selectively targeting many parts of our city through a variety of strategies to reduce that number. And we have been successful in reducing our serious crashes as well as fatalities in the last 5 years, 6 years since we adopted that program. Specifically on this corridor, we're looking at that crash data and the types of things that we would do to address it. We're looking at the speeds on the street. It is signed at 45 miles an hour, which is pretty fast for a street that's traveling near schools, near major shopping centers, near some of our oldest and higher density neighborhoods. So tons of activity on the street, not just cars, although there are a lot of cars. And so with that volume of traffic and with the speeds that are posted on the street, we are looking to slow the street down. We also recognize that we're a city it's about 140 years old. And with that age, the character of our city has changed. With the density has included, we have more congestion, we have more traffic signals, we have more folks taking different types of travel than just driving their car. And so we do feel that we can slow down the road, we can integrate in traffic calming on the street. We can do things that are optimizing our signal timing, optimizing the visibility of our signals so that drivers are less distracted. Drivers are seeing those signals. We're literally slowing things down. We know that the faster you go on a street, the more likelihood that you have a serious or a fatal accident. So we're looking at our vision, those are kind of a lot of the things that are in our Vision Zero. We look at our crash data, we look at our speed and volume data. We also we're a city that's really proud of our public outreach. We are a big enough city with 200,000 people that we're doing big city things, big ambitious goals. But we're small enough of a community. It feels, still feels like a small town. I've been here for about 36 years. I've seen a lot of population growth, but our residents, our community members feel connected to these projects. They feel empowered to vocalize what's important to them, and they approach the council with their feedback on these projects. So we expect, we're just getting ready to try to launch into the public outreach feedback of this project. We expect to get a ton of feedback. So in addition to the data that we will use that community feedback on what's important for people when we redesign this street. Again, we are focusing on it as a safety project and really reducing the fatalities and serious crashes on that street. We were awarded this grant in September of 2024. We've had a lot of communications in the last 6-8 months with US DOT on finalizing the grant agreement. We are not there yet. Happy to hear the comments from Connor about signing those grants and moving forward. We're awaiting about 12.5 million for this project and are optimistic about moving forward with it.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you so much, Eric. Now I'm going to turn to Justin to tell us about what's happening in Oklahoma City.
Sure, thank you. We won a SS4A planning grant the first year that they were available. We went with a kind of a big grant and asked for $800,000 with a $200,000 match because we knew we needed to really do a lot of kind of deep internal work to get there. Oklahoma City is the 20th largest city by population in the United States, but we're geographically enormous. We're 620 square miles and have over 800 signalized intersections. So it's a really big city. We had a lot of data to really come through. I think something that we were able to do through the plan that I really appreciated was coordinate between departments that often don't have a chance to get together and comb over data in the same way. So police department, fire, emergency services, engineering, and planning, all getting in a room with a consultant facilitator and really kind of going through deep diving. Hey, what's happening along our high entry network that we developed through the plan? The data tells us where the problems were, but we needed a lot of context around why are these crashes happening? Why are some of the crashes being fatal? From that, we've been able to determine, a lot of important study corridors that we've deep dived into in our Vision Zero plan, and as well as a lot of intersections that we know need a lot of specific work. Interesting things came out of the plan that we didn't expect. We found that we had like a visibility problem on certain corridors, and we needed to look more into lighting. We found out that people like police and fire had already been piloting some new technologies around intersections that we wanted to really expand because they hadn't seen how they could coordinate with engineering on some of those. So a lot of opportunity to work together and facilitate. We just adopted our Vision Zero plan now, funded by the SS4A in February, and so we're working up on a implementation grant as kind of our next phase. I'd say, but we know that that's not the only way to implement, and we have an upcoming GEO bond election, and so we kind of tied our planning effort to that as well. Whereas we were going out to the community and talking to them about what the infrastructure needs were anyways, we're able to kind of marry this SS4A planning in with it and talk to them about the community about what their safety needs were. And as we're building out that list now of projects we want to take out to voters, if we have other street needs we're going to do anyways, we're going to resurface, we're going to expand an intersection. This allows us to really have some idea of what we want to fold in as far as safety improvements into that as well. It also just found that some of our standards just needed to be updating too. So we've launched into updating our bike lane standards, our trail standards, our access management standards, and we're rewriting some of our code to try to really make sure that we hit all the kind of the main points of the plan. It's going to be very multidisciplinary in its execution too. We figured out that we were having some different departments were trying to do safety education that really could have been coordinated together better. So it's been a good internal exercise for us as well to really figure out how to work together in this project.
Great. Thank you all so much for sharing. Now we can get a little deeper. Several of you referenced data and how you pulled data both to apply for the program and how you're using the data that you generated through the planning process to be able to really focus on the areas that require the safety improvements. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about whether you had that data capacity already in place or there was something you had to build as part of this, and just how you're being able to. We know that data for data doesn't do very much, but how you're being able to sort of build the analytical capacity to put that to work. So maybe I'll change up the order and I'll start with you, Eric.
You said I'm the lucky one. Yeah. So if I understand your question correctly, we do have the in-house capacity with tracking and analyzing and guiding on all of our data. So we have a really strong, I think, and I'm the director of transportation, so I have to be confident in this. I think we have a really tremendous transportation planning team as well as traffic engineering team. We have Our traffic engineering team has been the lead on this project, and they are very safety focused. I mentioned early the Vision Zero policy that we have. That's really a guiding set of policies and practices that we're enacting, and it gives us a lot of data. So we work really closely with our state transportation, Arizona Department of Transportation. They're the final say on categorizing accidents and crashes. And so we work a lot with them. We obviously work a lot with our own internal volume and speed data. We work a lot with our own, even though ADOT is the final say on crash data, we have our own police department that we have weekly meetings with. We know where the hotspots are on traffic crashes, and we work a lot with them on analyzing each crash and determining, hey, what could be done better with this specific case. And we put together, all the trends with that kind, with police department, with ADOT data, with speed and crash and volume data, put together the trends, and we see where those hotspots are. In this particular case, we know it's our busiest east-west street. We know that it has 7 bus routes that intersect with it or travel along it. We know that there's schools and churches and shopping centers that are all along it. All those are data points that we use. Again, I mentioned the community outreach. So talking to all those stakeholders that live along the street, or that may have, a shopping center may have users, and we can drill down with our team and get kind of, hey, what's this particular shopping center, the times a day that it's busiest, all that kind of stuff. We work really closely with all the stakeholders in the corridor too. So the only other thing I'd add is that we have a strong ADA team at the city. So we're using ADA information. Hey, where are sidewalks maybe deficient? Where are wheelchair users struggling to get across the street? That kind of information. It's in our general plan to do these kinds of road work improvements. It's in our transportation plan to do these kind of road work improvements. So all those are pieces of information that help guide us on the project.
That's great. Maybe Justin, I'll turn to you next. How did you guys put together the data? Did you already have the capacity, and how are you using it now?
Sure. Yeah, we have, we found that we had a lot of data, and we do some analysis of it already, but I would say that it opened our eyes on some things. In particular, like our police reports do a very extensive collection of data after fatalities, and we weren't utilizing that to its fullest capability. So being able to really dive into that and have some consultant help as well, we were able to kind of really build out crash profiles that told us a lot more about the whys behind some of the crashes. That was very useful. They helped us build out some dashboards so we can be more transparent on our public reporting on this. And to what Eric was saying too about the public engagement, I think it helped us a lot as well. We did a lot of public engagement with our plan, and we got a lot of context around accidents we were already seeing in the data. And when residents are able to drop a pin on a map and tell us why, or we found some interesting things like simple solutions sometimes, like lack of visibility around a corner that we just hadn't picked up yet. And some of those had simple solutions we didn't need to really wait for. We could just immediately dispatch crews out and make some of those changes, which was very helpful. Going forward, we're going to continue to benchmark and report on our serious injuries and fatalities. And we've set pretty ambitious goals about getting those down over the next 10 years. And I think working with the data is pretty key. I think, again, I mentioned sharing between departments. I think we also opened some doors there too. I know that now when we're having like a fatal pedestrian crash, police captain will call me up and we'll review footage together, unfortunately, sometimes, and figure out what went wrong, what we could do differently. And that's a way we're working together now that we weren't working before the plan. Yeah.
That's great. How about you, Mayor Jensen?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think everyone's made great points on data. So like a typical politician, I'm going to go answer another question before I answer the question you asked, if that's okay. But
love it.
I thought Rebecca Owens actually asked a great question in the chat about how important is it for your council or leadership to adopt the Vision Zero policy prior to application? And I was just going to point out, we didn't adopt any of that. I mean, we obviously have had conversations around that, but a lot of this was adopted with our planning grant that as it went through. So kind of simultaneously, I kind of wanted to answer that question there. A lot of our the planning grant we got, which spurred the safety action plan, has really helped drive these conversations. In terms of the data, I think that's incredibly important. Again, we have in-house data between police and fire. I will also say, and nothing kind of annoys probably a mayor more than sometimes planning does. I love planning, but sometimes it drives us crazy because we want to get to the implementation process, and all you guys are nodding because your bosses probably get mad about it too, I'm sure. But I will say this planning grant that we got actually led us to 2 additional state grants that kind of supplemented our safety action plan. So we were able to go after some state dollars specific to the things that we adopted amongst the safety action plan. So I just kind of want to point out those 2 things, that not only, yes, we're all going to drive to implementation. That's always what we want to do as local government officials. But along the way, these planning grants can really spur more opportunities. That data conversation, again, to Justin and Eric's point, important to have that. We have that in-house. That certainly drives a lot of it, but that community element, that feedback is also important to pair with the data, so we can kind of make sure that we're matching up what we are seeing in numbers with what is being seen in reality, as we move forward.
And that's great. And Mayor Jensen, you touched on this sort of preemptively, which I appreciated. We heard from Connor, and we've heard before from federal folks that because the way this program is structured, it is a lot easier to get a planning grant than it is to get an implementation grant. And to want to sort of make a plug for any communities who are on here who haven't yet done a safety action plan, there's a lot of times fear about all of the process that's attached to a federal grant. Can you just kind of give us the real deal on what did that look like, and whether it was worth it in the end?
Yeah, I kind of always joke about this because I think our engineering department kind of applied. We had struggled with the DOT in full disclosure, and I'm a pretty honest broker. We had struggled with the DOT under the last administration just because of our size of our community, the economic and demographic makeup. It was just a little bit challenging at times to go after certain grants. So I think the Safe Seats for All was kind of a wing and a prayer. We saw it come up and decided to put an application together in-house. These are conversations every community is having anyways across the board. You know that, Jamie, better than most. People are having these conversations. So we did, and honestly, it was a pretty in-house application, pretty direct, and we were pretty excited, to be honest, to get awarded that, because we also know, planning grants are kind of like a gateway drug, right? They're the ones that lead to the next phase. So we were incredibly excited to have these dollars come alongside, and it just kind of doubled our efforts in this space. So if you're on the fence about it, if you're nervous about it, again, I think absolutely something to move forward with. If at the very least, it's going to have you and your departments go through a very extensive conversation around safety, which is what you should be probably prioritizing every day in your community anyways. And then who knows what the future looks like in terms of some of those additional dollars that come up. I was glad to see Connor say that they're looking to churn and burn, because I think it's incredibly important to get some of these things out the door within our communities. So I would take all nervousness off the table and proceed forward if you can.
No, that's great to hear, and I think I might have to add planning grants are a gateway drug to our
So
program
once I
website.
said that, I'm sure my comms team is cringing right now,
Oh,
but
no.
It works, right?
None of us want jargon. I feel like that's the real deal.
There you go.
And I think it was refreshing to hear you talk about what it looked like to go from getting the grant to actually putting it into action. And I just wonder, Justin, how was the process for you guys on the planning grant?
Genuinely, I think it's probably the simplest and most straightforward federal grant we've ever applied for. I mean, maybe there's something easier out there that I wasn't involved in, but of the things that we've really pursued, it was probably the easiest, most straightforward grant we've ever pursued. And I appreciate what Mayor Jensen said too about looking for the other opportunities. So something I hadn't mentioned is this is also open to conversations between us and our DOT. We looked into some of our state highways going through the city as well and found a lot of issues. And now we're in active conversations with them about how they can use HSIP funding and try to address some of those needs as well. So it was very productive. Yeah.
That's great. I know an implementation grant is not as easy. Eric, if you want to just talk to us about what did the team look like to apply for that, and sort of how long did that take you guys, and what was the process like?
Yeah, good question. I mentioned I'm really proud of our transportation team. This was led through our traffic engineering section of transportation, and then fully supported by other members in our department, including our transportation maintenance team. They're the ones, it's actually my biggest team. They're the ones that are paving the roads, fixing the signals and striping the roads, putting up signs. So they're, boots on the ground, and they know what's happening every day. So they're informing, our traffic engineers, and are a part of the process as well. And then our transportation planning team, that is hand in hand with all the work that our traffic engineers are doing. Those three components, and then throw in the leadership and support from our council, and from our city manager's office, and from police department, in enforcement, and helping us with safe streets. That's the team, but again, led by our traffic engineering team. I will say that I think it took us 3 attempts to get this funding. It's a big dollar project. We got 12.5 million. We're very happy about that. And again, looking forward to the grant agreement being signed. We have 3 million that we're putting forward with our own local money. So, and that's the formula that we have for a lot of our projects, that especially our bigger, larger dollar capital projects. We are a city that is turning a lot of dirt. We are very much, to Connor's point, we are very much interested in, and to Mayor Jensen's comment too, we're very much interested in moving past our planning documents, and we have a lot of them, and I'm happy about those, but turning dirt and changing our streets and investing in infrastructure and really getting these projects to happen. And so we are excited about that. We have projects all over the city, large and small, that we partner with the federal government on, and our state and local, state and county government as well. So that's a little bit more on kind of who's leading the project, how we fund it, and then the other kind of ancillary team members like our council and police department that support our traffic engineering and transportation team in putting this together.
Great. We're gonna put up a poll for folks a little earlier than we normally do, because really what we're focused on is we have lined up lots of experts on transportation safety. I am not one of them, and I want to make sure that we connect all of you who are seeking to get deep technical support on your applications with the best in class safety experts. And so if you are somebody who's on the line and you need help with a specific component of an application, please let us know. We have folks lined up to help you. And so if there were questions in the chat that are really about like, how do I use my data to be able to do this? Let's make sure that you get connected with somebody who can work with you, understand your community's data, and really help you figure out how to put that into a compelling narrative. I wanted to ask one of the things, Eric, that you just mentioned that I think is really helpful for people to hear is that it wasn't your first try out of the gate. And we hear this on the RAISE grant, we hear it on a bunch of grants, and just want to, and we can even get beyond Safe Streets, but just to encourage all of the folks who are on who maybe applied for a Safe Streets grant before, or even a RAISE grant that qualifies for Safe Streets and haven't gotten one, to think about applying again, because sometimes it does take a few feedback loops to get there. And then just to ask those of you on the call, Mayor Jensen, Justin, we heard from Eric, if you've had that similar experience of having to sort of go back to the well and recraft it, and what did it take to get it over the finish line? So maybe I'll go to you, Justin, first.
Sure. Yeah, that's just part of the federal grant world, is putting together applications, putting them in the pitch, always trying to get the evaluation back from the DOT officials when you don't get the grant your first time, and then retool and go back out again. Just a normal part of our process. We consider ourselves lucky when we get something on the first time, because it doesn't happen all that often, but just having key projects in mind, and really knowing how to pursue them and go at it from different angles, and a lot of times compiling a lot of funding sources together. It's just kind of a major part of the process.
about you, Mayor Johnson? Have you guys had to go through that experience as well? And how do you kind of
Yeah,
like get your team motivated to go for it again?
Yeah, well, again, like I said, I kind of joked that we got denied the first round on the implementation that was in January, and which I wasn't surprised to be, because again, that implementation is going to be a leap from the planning piece of it. I always say though, and I kind of reiterated earlier, that any grant opportunity is not a wasted opportunity. What can be taken from that planning phase? I also firmly believe in my theory is that the government shouldn't be the answer for all projects like this. So if you're relying on a government entity to do a project, I would evaluate that project, because these are all worthy projects with or without grant funding. And sometimes, to your point, Justin, you have to go back to the well and look at a different pot of money or different resources there to continue. It may take longer to get there, but I think that continues to motivate our team to continue to apply and reach out to the DOT. We've had great, regardless of the administration, they've been willing to sit down and talk us through the application, why it wasn't scored well, or why, what the landscape looks like, gather that feedback, make tweaks, but sometimes just time is what it takes, and continued persistence. Sometimes you just got to wear them down, right? You got to keep going after it, and have conversations with members, with members of Congress, with whoever you can talk to about great projects. Get in their ear to tell your story. It's a part of your community's narrative, anyways. So I just try to keep telling my team that this is just a churn and burn every single day. And if this was easy, someone else would have gotten it already. So if we want to get it, we need to go work hard to get it.
Great. And I think just a last question, and thank you so much sharing your insights and the process you've gone through, and your really honest feedback has been, I think, really helpful for cities who are thinking about applying for this grant. One piece of advice you have for cities that are looking at June 26th and starting to realize they have, a little less than 2 months to put their applications together. I'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, great question. And it in my mind, it dovetails off of the last topic we just had. To make the application more competitive. One of the things that I think is important over the years and our numerous successes with getting federal funding is show that your community has skin in the game. So to Mayor Jensen's point, these are all important projects, and if it's really important to your city, you're also figuring out, or your location, your city, you're figuring out a little bit of money that you can put into it as well. And maybe if you don't get federal funding, sometimes the federal funding is what enables us to do a more comprehensive, bigger project. But we will incrementally work towards, if we don't, absent that funding, we'll incrementally work towards and do with what we can with our own finances to advance that. So showing that it is a true financial partnership, not just a community, a political partnership, it's a financial partnership too, I think does make you more competitive. I also think, we are one of like nearly 30 cities in a metro area. So we try to coordinate with all of our neighboring cities and in the metro area and try to, through maybe our council of governments, we figure out, hey, who's submitting for this particular pot of money in this round, and you try to find the best projects in the region. We always try to make sure that our Tempe projects are the best projects in the region, but we will stand back if it's like, hey, this is a project that maybe is the best project in the region or the best 2 projects in the region, and that's what should be submitted in this round. So regional coordination and regional buy-in to that project, I think helps, because it shows maybe that regional coordination, and I think that appeals to the federal government. It also shows that you recognize, hey, the money should go around the country, right? It's not all, if you have 7 projects from one same area, you're probably not going to get all 7 funded. You're lucky if you get 1. So those are just 2 pieces of advice that I'd share, skin in the game and getting that kind of regional coordination. And then, of course, just keep showing up. Listen to the feedback. That, if you have a failed attempt at a grant, listen to that feedback that you get and keep, refine it, sharpen it, and keep showing up and making your project stronger and keep trying.
Great. I'll go to you, Mayor Jensen, next.
Yeah, I think Eric did a yeoman's job there. He was much more eloquent in explaining that skin in the game piece. I think he's exactly right. Point being is that you're going to chip away at a good project regardless of the funds that come from whatever agency towards that. I would just say, and I say this hesitantly because I'm going to compete with all of you in this next round for an implementation grant. So I don't want to give away my cards, but I think our new friend Connor just kind of outlined the 4 key areas: safety, innovation, families, and turning dirt, that clearly DOT is focused on. So I would make sure in your application, and again, I wish I didn't tell you all this, but I would tie in each one of those into your application, knowing that every administration is going to view things differently. And that's just, elections have consequences, yada, yada, yada. It is what it is. But you clearly know that's what the secretary is focused on. That's what the DOT is focused on. And I think that this administration too is very much focused on ROI. So making sure you're showing the return on that investment for federal dollars, what they're going to get in return. Make sure that is highlighted clearly in your application as well.
Yeah, we've often discussed on different webinars for all sorts of grant programs. Where can you show, a triple benefit, right?
Mhm.
Great. Like, obviously we want in the Safe Streets program to be accomplishing safety, but is there an economic development angle? Is there an education angle? Are there other ways that you can talk about this project that show it's going to have secondary and, tertiary benefits? And so,
And those other angles too have other advocates with them as well. And I think that that's important as you're looking through this. Those different angles will have different advocates.
That's such a good point. I remember Mayor Warren from Fontana talking about, getting the Boys and Girl Scouts to, write letters and do videos as part of her application, and just being able to really make the case. I don't know that it's always those support letters about quantity, but really about the quality and tying it to the project, because DOT doesn't know your community. They don't know this project. And if you don't paint it out for them and really show them what the benefits are, they won't know about those.
Yeah.
Justin, you get the final word here.
All right. No pressure. Well, I would echo the point of don't let the fear of failure stop you. I mean, I think worst case scenario on something like this, you're looking at a planning grant, you're at least going to start conversations inside your community about how do we do more for safety on transportation. And there's a lot of fruitful stuff to come out of that. So it's kind of the beauties of the program is it's getting everybody to talk about things we need to talk about anyways. But then I would also just say, like, really dive into the weeds and the NOFO and the eligible uses. This one has some wrinkles some of the other programs don't have. And I think things like the ability to do demonstration corridors is like packaged with a planning grant is an opportunity probably for a lot of smaller communities, especially that, hey, we don't want to just do planning. We also want to do a corridor, but we don't know exactly what that looks like. There's a lot of flexibility in some of that. And I would encourage a lot of communities to kind of dive into the weeds on that and figure out if it has something that like meets your needs.
That was great advice. And just want to remind everyone, we've shared it a few times here, but we're not new to the Safe Streets program. We're so excited that it's back, and that we have a lot of resources that are available so that, as Justin said, you at least get your feet wet in applying for whether it's a planning grant. Remember, if you've gotten a planning grant, there's demonstration grants available, which are, to be able to do some of those quick builds and see, make sure that what you are thinking about doing for implementation actually works and achieves the benefits that you're hoping it will. And then of course the big implementation grants. But we're here to help. And so whether you've filled it out in the poll or you put it in the chat, we'll be reaching out to you to make sure that you feel supported in this next cycle, and just are so grateful to Mayor Jensen and Justin and Eric for joining us. I'm also going to put back in the chat Connor's email. We really appreciate that Connor and his team are standing by to answer questions that cities may have, either about this grant opportunity or about existing grants that maybe you want to see if you can unlock. So thank you to the team there as well, and I'll pass back to Michelle.
Jamie, thank you. And thank you again to Mayor Jensen, Justin, and Eric. Really appreciate you joining us today. So we're wrapping up now today with just a reminder that we hope you can join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern as we host a session to discuss, innovative technology and strategies that local officials can use to protect their communities in the face of natural disasters, which affects us all. On May 6th, we're also going to be hosting a webinar focused on building data and evidence into grant management, decision-making, and storytelling. 2 important sessions. So we are going to put the links in the chat, and we hope you will join us for those. And just want to thank you again for joining us today and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.